My name is Colleen Fogarty, and I'm a graduate research assistant at the Goldstein Museum of Design. Today I'm going to talk to you about this dress that's dated between 1950 and 1957. This is a shirtwaist house dress that was designed by Anne Fogarty and manufactured by Margot Inc. Anne Fogarty was an American sportswear designer, and she was active between 1940 and 1980. She is known for her understated, ladylike designs that were financially accessible to many women. Her garments were easy to wear, practical clothing made with casual fabrics and ultra-feminine details. One of her most popular designs was the shirtwaist dress, like this garment you see here. It combined masculine shirting details with a full skirt meant to be worn over multiple petticoats and crinolines. Fashion in the 1950s was still heavily influenced by Dior's New Look, which came in 1947. Dior's New Look emphasized femininity and formality. It highlighted the curves of the body through rounded soft shoulder lines, very full skirts, and a small nipped-in waist, and again used multiple layers of petticoats or crinolines to hold out the fullness of skirts. This dress reflects a relaxing and a restyling of the New Look silhouette, and this occurred in the mid-1950s. The waist and bodice of this dress are not as tight and nipped in as seen earlier in the decade. This dress uses darts for shaping as opposed to princess seams, but it still has the soft rounded shoulders, a small waist, and a very full skirt. It's a bit more practical and relaxed and shows the influence of American sportswear design on fashion. To create the desired silhouette of the 1950s, women needed to wear several types of undergarments. Oftentimes these undergarments were made out of new synthetic stretch fabrics, which meant they were a lot more comfortable to wear than they had been in previous decades. First, women would wear a brassiere, also known as a bra, to create uplift for the bust. Instead of a corset, women would wear a girdle, which would cinch in the waist. This girdle often went over the hips as well and would extend to create a nice, long, smooth shape, and these garments could also be known as a merry widow. Over a brassiere and a girdle, she often wore a slip to smooth out all of the body lines. Last, a petticoat would be worn in order to create the fullness needed for the skirts of the 1950s. These were often made out of stiffened nylon that were lightweight and comfortable to wear, but would hold their shape and support the weight of the skirt. So this is an example of a petticoat from the 1950s. This is also from Anne Fogarty, and it's made from a stiffened nylon fabric. So here is the waist of it. So this would have gone around the waist of the wearer. This is just made from a white cotton fabric. You can see that there is a closure on the side with a hook and eye. And then the nylon has been gathered into the white fabric, and it is very stiff. So you can see as I'm moving it that it's very, very stiff, but it's also very lightweight, breathable, and comfortable. So it would have been very comfortable for the wearer to have on underneath their dress. So all of this stiffened nylon would have helped to support the gathers and fullness of the skirts of the 1950s, to push them out from the hips to create a nice full skirt around the body. Based on the use of cotton fabric, this dress is more of a day wear dress. Evening dresses would have been made from more luxurious fabrics like silk, satin, and velvet. This dress is made from a yarn-dyed cotton in a vertical black and white stripe. It also features a red rosebud machine embroidery design. In the 1950s, there was a lot of playfulness that emerged in patterns, such as machine embroidery. And it was also popular to see stripes and bold colors like navy and white and black and white. And this was a big change from the austere fabrics and colors that were in the 1940s during World War II. Dress also features a white linen collar that's bound with the same striped fabric on the bias around the edges. And cotton is important in dresses like this because it's easy to care for, it can be washed and pressed at home by women, and again it shows that American sportswear influence of a more practical, easy to wear dress. This dress also shows a lot of evidence of wear and tear. You'll notice that the collar is pretty severely discolored, especially coming down the center front placket. The fabric is discolored. The inside of the bodice has turned a little bit yellow, and that's probably from wear, from body oils. And then down the center front of the skirt, we also have some areas of discoloration. And that's pretty common with historic dresses because they do reflect the wear and tear of the wearer over time. So this sort of gives us a little peek into the life of the person who would have worn this dress. Now you can also see we have some pit staining here on the armholes. That's pretty common to see as well. Now I'm going to talk about the details of this dress, starting with the front bodice. Like I mentioned earlier, this dress has a white linen collar and it's bound on the bias on the same striped fabric as the body. This collar is hand stitched to the neckline of the dress with a catch stitch. And this would have made it really easy to remove this collar so that it could have been washed and bleached separately of the dress for when it got dirty. As you can see, this collar is quite a bit more stained than the rest of the dress, and this would have made it a practical and easy care. And Fogarty has been very clever with the design of this dress in terms of aligning all of her stripes so that you can't see any of the seaming details. If she had used princess seams for this dress, it would have been really noticeable through here that the stripes didn't align. Instead, she used darts and pleats to create shaping. So first we have a bust dart. There's one on each side, and it can be really difficult to see. The dart runs right along here, and you notice that those vertical stripes are perfectly aligned along that bust dart. Next, we have a series of pleats on the bodice to create some more shaping. So they start here at the neckline. There's one here. And then they go down to below the bust, where then those pleats are stitched into place. And you can see that the stripe then matches in a nice little chevron here coming down to the waist, so that pleat is hardly noticeable. And there's a second pleat here. Again, it does the same thing, comes down, and then it's stitched into place and comes down into the waistline. You'll also notice over the center front placket that the stripes are perfectly aligned, so you can't see where the placket starts and stops. This dress has a button placket. There's 5 buttons at the center front. There's a hook and loop at the neckline, see there, as well as additional hook at the waistline, and then a zipper that goes into the skirt. This type of closure would have been really practical and easy for women. They would have been able to get dressed by themselves and not have to have the assistance of another person in order to get dressed. So again, this sort of represents that really practical easiness of American sportswear. Going into the sleeve, this is a short kimono sleeve. So there's a seam along the shoulder here. You'll notice again that all of those stripes are perfectly matched along that shoulder seam. And then there's a seam that goes up under the arm. So unlike a traditional armhole, which would have had a rounded arm side here, we have this kimono sleeve, which would have created that soft rounded shoulder shape that was desired from Dior's new look. So on the wear, this would have gently sloped down over the arm like this to create that soft rounded shoulder. The hem of the sleeve ends in a turn back cuff that mimics men's shirting details, hence why we call this a shirtwaist dress, also because of the collar and the placket. So you can see we just have a simple turn back here to create a little cuff. And here you can see the inside of how the hem is finished. It's again also been hand stitched with a catch stitch, and then some taping has been run along the edge of the hem to conceal the edge of the fabric. So now we're looking at the back bodice. You can see the back side of the collar here is just a nice rounded shape. We'll look close again at how the collar is attached to the neckline with just a catch stitch. And Fogarty has cleverly hidden her center back seam of this bodice as well. It's right along here, along this black stripe, which you cannot see unless you look very carefully. Also, the back features 2 waist darts. So there's one here, you can see the chevroning of the stripe that indicates where the dart is. And then there's another one here. But again, they're very cleverly hidden within the stripes so they don't interrupt the overall flow of the dress. Now I'm going to go into detail about the skirt. So this dress originally would have been worn with a matching belt. And we have evidence of that because there's a remaining chain stitch of yarn here that would have created a loop at the waist for a belt to be inserted. And dresses in the 1950s were very frequently worn with some sort of coordinating belt. So we have a very full skirt, as you can see, and it all gathers in at the waistline. I'm going to open this up so that you can see the interior gathers. So see all of these gathers very heavily along the waistline. You'll also notice a grosgrain ribbon tape that's set into the waistline as well. And this would have served two purposes. One, to sort of conceal all of the waistline and make it a little bit more cleaner finished on the interior. The second is that it would also have helped the dress stay in place on the wearer. So you notice that there is a little hook here at the end of this tape. And then on the other side, over here, we have the loops. So this tape would have attached to itself and kind of would have helped to keep the dress sitting on the natural waist of the wearer on top of all of the undergarments. You'll also see that we have the zipper placket that goes into the skirt at the center front that would make it really easy for the wearer to get in and out of. This dress also has a fun special feature, which I love personally as a female, which is pockets. So here we've got some pockets in the seam of the dress, the side seam of the dress in the same body fabric, so you can see the embroidery on the pocket. And Fogarty has also very cleverly hidden all of her seams on the skirt as well. So below this pocket is our side seam, and you can see that she again has perfectly matched her stripe so that you cannot tell where one fabric panel starts and the other fabric panel ends on the skirt. Now I'm down at the hem of the dress. So you can see all of that fullness from the waistline has been released from those gathers and creates this very, very full skirt at the bottom. So at the hem of this dress, I'm gonna flip this over so you can see it. Similar to the sleeves and also the collar, the hem has been held into place with hand sewing. This is called a catch stitch. And we do have evidence that the hem of this dress might have been adjusted several times. So let's see, if we look closely here, you'll see evidence of some little stitches in the black stripes, and that's probably the location of the original hem of this dress. So originally this hem probably would have been a little bit longer. We also have evidence that the hem at some point was taken up beyond what you see here. So there's a few places where we have evidence of stitching that happened higher on the hem. So it's possible that this hem that we see today had been flipped up and hemmed up higher at some point to shorten it. And it's possible that this was done, maybe not in the 1950s, maybe during a different time period when this dress was worn, in the 60s when they had shorter dresses, or perhaps somebody who wore it as a vintage style dress had also shortened it up in order to fit with more current styling. So hems at this time, could be modified pretty easily depending on what was going on with silhouette and style details, just by taking up or letting out the hem. So I'm talk a little bit about the construction of this dress as well. So all of the major seams on this are machine sewn, as that would have been completely common in the 1950s, and also a dress like this probably would have been somewhat mass produced. So here, this is one of the side seams of the skirt. You can see evidence of machine sewing. Then you'll also notice that the seam allowance edge has been pinked. That's the zigzag sort of look to it, and that would have prevented the cotton fabric from fraying. However, the hems of everything, so the hem of the skirt and the sleeve and then the attachment of the collar, those were all hand stitched with this catch stitch. So you'll still see a mixture of machine and hand sewing in dresses at this time.